When I asked why he had made a family card for his in-laws, James laughed and said, "Because they're my family. Of course, they should have a family card, right? Got a problem with that." He added, "If you knew who took you in when you were all alone, you wouldn't say such things, would you?" I was surprised by his bold tone, which was new to me. Was James always like this? He continued, "If you're thankful, you should do more for my family. Then I'll consider you part of the family. Until then, you're on a trial period." I had never heard of a trial period in marriage. James went on, seeing I was quiet. "In other words, you're not fully part of the family yet. If you don't like it, you can leave any time. For now, our family is just the six of us." I was shocked. After that, I immediately canceled all our joint credit cards and moved out. My name is Olivia Cook, 30 years old. I'm a freelance illustrator. I used to work as a designer for a big advertising agency, but started on my own 5 years ago when I got married. Now I work from home. My parents died in an accident when I was young. I was raised by my maternal grandparents, but moved back to my parents' apartment near the city center for college. I've been living there ever since. I met my husband James at an Italian restaurant where he worked. It was a nice place with reasonable prices and good food, so my colleagues and I often went there. That's when James, the handsome waiter, became a topic of conversation. Indeed, he was good-looking. The manager once joked that a lot of the regulars came just to see James, and I could see why. I won't deny that. I became one of James's fans because I thought he was really cool. He really stood out. For some reason, we quickly became closer and soon people were calling us a couple. Surprisingly, we ended up getting married. I don't remember much about that time. It's almost like I was in a daze. When I snapped out of it, I was married to a man I was calling my husband. But I loved James then and was happy when we got married. I quit my job as a designer at the company and started working independently. It was a friendly departure, and I continued the same kind of work, but on my own. James kept his job at the Italian restaurant, working different hours, sometimes late into the night. It became hard to work as usual, and I had always wanted to work independently, so I decided to go for it. "It's a good idea, Olivia. It'll be easier for you, and it's great to keep doing what you love." James supported my decision. That's how our life as newlyweds began. We both didn't care for flashy things, so we decided not to have a wedding ceremony and just officially registered our marriage. We met each other's families briefly, and that was it. James went to work, and I worked from home and did the household chores. Our schedules were irregular, but we kept in touch and waited to have meals together when we were both homes. It was a happy, simple life, and I thought, marriage is nice. But about a year after we got married, everything fell apart. "My family wants to come over. Is that okay?" James asked one day. Of course, I said it was fine. I had only met and briefly talked to James's family at our initial meeting, so I thought this was a good chance to get to know them better. Having lost my parents at a young age, I always admired James's large family. But when his family of 5 arrived, I was left speechless. "Hey, which room is mine?" his sister asked as soon as she walked into our house. James's sister, who is 35 years old and 3 years older than both James and me, worked at a local supermarket. I was shocked by her rude behavior, so different from the polite greeting she gave me when we first met. James's 22-year-old sister was also there, but she was quiet and just stood there without saying a word. I remember she barely spoke when we first met. Hurried by James's sister, I showed the 2 sisters to the guest room and James's parents to the room that used to be my parents' room. It was the only Japanese-style room in the apartment, so I thought it would be best for them. After settling into their rooms, James's sister announced, "Well, since we're going to be living here together, you better start serving our family properly." I was confused by what she meant, but when I looked at James for help, he just laughed in a way I had never seen before. It turned out his family had given up their own home and moved into my apartment without telling me. Sorry, our family home suddenly had to be vacated, and they had nowhere to go, he explained. I wish he had told me earlier. I had thought it was just for a day or three, and this was really inconvenient. When I mentioned this to James, trying not to upset him, he looked down and apologized. Please, just until they find somewhere else to go, he pleaded. I couldn't say no. How could I turn away people in need, especially the family of someone important to me, without even a place to go? I reluctantly agreed to live together on the condition that they find a new place as soon as possible. But I would come to regret this decision. James's family showed no restraint. All four of them, from the day they moved in, did nothing and left everything to me, saying whatever they wanted. They made no effort to look for a house or a job. When I asked about their jobs, I was in for another surprise. Oh, I quit that lousy supermarket job, she had said. She was employed, but apparently it was just part-time work. I had thought she worked full-time because of her age, but she told me she hadn't had a steady job since high school. James's parents also had part-time jobs, which they quit before coming here. And of course, James's other sister was unemployed. She had claimed she was a student, but that was not true. Why should I work when I've become part of a wealthy family? She asked. When I asked who she was talking about, I got another shocking reply. You, of course. You got a big settlement and insurance money from your parents' accident, and you don't even have a mortgage on this apartment. You can live without working, James's sister said, laughing. I complained to James when he got home, but he yelled in a way I had never seen before. Everyone's tired from suddenly having to leave their home. Let them rest for a while. Or do you want to kick out my family, Olivia? Stunned, I froze. Then James suddenly softened his tone. Sorry for yelling. I'm having a tough day too. Can you just be a little more patient? Looking back, James was skilled at manipulating situations with a mix of kindness and harshness. But at that moment, I didn't see it and agreed to endure a bit longer. The tyranny of James's family got worse. They treated me like a servant at home and demanded money when going out. We can't job hunt without a penny, can we? It's fine, but if we can't find work, we'll just keep living here, they said. I reluctantly gave them some money, which they claimed to have spent without finding jobs. They probably never looked for work, but if I said that, they would accuse me of lying without proof, and James's whole family would blame me for hours. Telling James didn't solve the problem. Everyone's frustrated about not finding jobs. Sorry, just bear with it a little longer. I'll talk to them, James said, trying to smooth things over. But as time went on, I felt like saying anything was pointless. However, the frequency of them asking for money gradually decreased, perhaps because James said something, so the issue seemed to resolve itself. Of course, the money I had given them was never returned. Then, after about 2 months of living this way, I noticed something alarming. Why is the credit card bill so high? Could it be unauthorized use? When I quickly checked the credit card statement, all the charges were made with family credit cards. The purchases included food, drinks, books, games, and even expensive brand bags and clothes. Each item was labeled with a number from 1 to 6, showing that 6 family credit cards had been issued. These credit cards were in my name, with James using the family cards. It seems like you'd be better at handling this, and it's more convenient to consolidate payments, right? Can I leave it to you? He had said, and I ended up managing them. But it turned out these family cards had been issued without me knowing. James's family stopped asking for money because they could now make credit card payments and cash withdrawals. When I confronted James about why he made family cards for his in-laws without asking me, he laughed and said, Well, you complain when they say they have no money, so what choice do I have? Besides, you know who took you in when you were all alone, right? Can you really say such things to the important family of your benefactor? I was stunned into silence by his bold tone, unlike anything I had heard before. Was James always like this? If you're grateful, you should serve my family more. Then I'll acknowledge you as family too. Until then, consider it like you're on a trial period," he continued. I had never heard of a trial period in marriage. Seeing my silence, James pressed further. "This means you're not yet an official family member. If you don't like it, you can leave anytime. Right now, it's just the 5 of us in our family. Useless parasites, get out." That's when I realized James's true nature. I felt as if all the blood had drained from my body. Shocked, I considered divorcing James. In fact, I began to wonder why I had married James in the first place. Initially, I just thought he was a handsome guy, like the other girls. I was just excited about him being handsome, without any particular reason. Then one time, when I went to the restroom, James approached me. "You seem different from other people, Olivia. I don't know, kind of mystical." Sorry, it's not something I should say to a customer. I was surprised but kept listening, and I gradually started to pay more attention to James. Maybe that was his plan to make me like him. When I think about it calmly, it makes sense. I remember once when James came to our table for small talk. A colleague jokingly said I was a wealthy lady living alone in a condo. It was right after that he started talking to me, probably because he was interested in my wealth and the condo. Honestly, James wasn't really my type. To put it nicely, he was modern. To put it bluntly, he seemed a bit frivolous. I liked mature men who spoke quietly and seriously, but somehow I ended up falling for James. I always found that strange since James was the typical handsome guy, and it must have been easy for him to charm a woman, especially someone like me who was new to the workforce and not used to men. I fell for his tactics and ended up marrying him. This thought made me feel so frustrated and embarrassed. I felt like destroying everything in the house, but I wasn't foolish enough to act on that impulse. Instead, I decided to get revenge. To do that, I needed to endure this life a little longer. Just like James manipulated me, I planned to control his entire family. The condo we live in was bought by my father with a mortgage soon after I was born. It wasn't very expensive back then, but the area developed rapidly with a new shopping center nearby, and now it's considered a luxury condo. My parents, hoping for more children, bought a spacious condo. That's why there's enough room, even with James's family moving in. But even with its decent size, having James's family around is a nuisance for me, especially working from home. I'm enduring this only for the sake of revenge. As James's sister said, there's no mortgage payment for this condo. When I was 4, both of my parents died in a car accident. They were coming back from my paternal grandfather's funeral when they collided with a speeding car on the freeway. That day, I was supposed to go with my parents, but I caught the flu that was going around and had a high fever. So my maternal grandparents came to the condo where we lived with my parents to take care of me, leaving me as the only one who survived. The mortgage payments were covered by the group credit life insurance, so the only housing costs I pay are the management fees and property taxes. James, seeing the amount, said he would contribute just a bit more than that to our household expenses. There's no mortgage, so if I put in that much, we should manage with Olivia's income, right? We'll each use our own earnings for personal expenses. Sounds good, doesn't it? I agreed, thinking maybe he was right. Until then, I had been paying for everything by myself, so I thought his contribution would lighten my load. Looking back, it was foolish, but at the time, I was blinded by my love for James and just went along with whatever he said. James probably thinks he's the head of the household and the one supporting me, which is why he can so easily call me a parasite. But in reality, it's different. I pay for most of the expenses like utilities, food, social expenses, and entertainment. And now, 5 real parasites had been added to my household, making it impossible to manage with just that amount. I wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible, but I pretended not to notice and endured. I gritted my teeth and let James's family freely shop, reminding myself that I'll be the one laughing in the end. Then, 5 months after deciding to divorce, The day to act finally came. I'm tired. Please decide, it's either me or your family, I told James, presenting him with a final decision. He was surprised, but I continued without concern. None of your family members lift a finger to help around the house. They just dump all their chores on me. You know I work from home. I'm not just playing around. Yet they treat me like a freeloader and tell me to know my place since you're supporting me. I've had enough, I cried. I confronted James. He smirked at me and said, "Then you should leave. Didn't I tell you before? You're not really part of this family yet. Giving up like this means you didn't earn your place in the family." I acted shocked as I looked at him. What are you surprised about? If you can't live with my family, then you're the one who has to leave. Oh, and since I'm not at fault, I'll take this apartment as alimony, and I'll take half of your savings as part of the property division. Ah, so that was his plan all along. That's why his whole family kept harassing me, trying to drive me out. I knew it, but hearing it said outright was still a shock. It was someone I once loved and even married, but thanks to this, I made up my mind. Fine, I said, deciding to divorce James. But this condo is mine, and I'm not at fault either. What did you say the reason for the divorce is? You allowing your family to live with us without asking me and your family ignoring me, I said firmly to James. He seemed shocked that I outright rejected his proposal, not expecting such a response. It made sense, as I had always complied with his demands since our marriage. Thinking back on it made me angry. I don't want to spend another second with you all, so I'll leave now, but you should also prepare to leave. It's a joke, right? This is our home. We won't leave. Ever heard of residential rights? You can't just force people out who live here, James shouted. Ignoring his ranting, I left the house and went to my grandparents' place. I explained everything and asked if I could stay until things were settled. My grandparents were shocked to learn what I had gone through and scolded me for not consulting them earlier. With tears in their eyes, I apologized. "Grandma, Grandpa, I'm sorry for worrying you, but I'll be okay now. I might look fragile, but I'm not really," I said, forcing a laugh with tears in my eyes. The day after I left the apartment, James contacted me right away. "Hey, what's this all about?" "What are you referring to?" I asked, about the certified mail. I was impressed by how quickly things were moving. I had handed the divorce proceedings over to a lawyer, and when I told them yesterday that I was leaving the house, they arranged for everything to be sorted out today. "I'm not paying any alimony, and I'm not leaving the condo," James declared. But legally, he had an obligation to pay, and he didn't have the right to continue living in that apartment. "What are you talking about? That apartment is mine too, since we're married. If you insist, then pay me half its value to buy me out," he said. Such an absurd claim. Talking like this is getting us nowhere. "Please communicate through my lawyer from now on," I said, ending the call. I knew he would probably call again tomorrow, but I had no desire to talk any more that day. As expected, he called the next morning. "Hey, what's this all about?" He repeated the same line as yesterday, showing no creativity. "What are you referring to?" "The card's not working." "What did you do?" "What I did was cancel it. That card was mine, and you were just using the family card, remember?" Indeed, before leaving the house, I had switched all the contracts from that card to another and canceled it. Of course, the family cards would stop working when I canceled mine. I was the one paying for it. "Yes, you paid the apartment's management fee and property taxes, just for the first 4 months. It's not much, but I can deduct that from the alimony if you like," I mocked him. I heard some indistinct shouting from the other end of the phone. That's right, James only paid the agreed amount for just 4 months. He made various excuses about the store and whatnot, always finding a reason to ask me to wait, but then he stopped paying altogether. If he forgot and thought he was still paying, that's some poor memory. But I didn't care anymore. He's someone I'm cutting ties with. His memory doesn't matter to me. That's the situation, so please pay your half of the living expenses I've been covering. I've kept a detailed record of our household expenses, which I'll use as evidence to fairly divide our savings. It's marital property, he demanded. Yes, I understand. Let's split it accordingly, I agreed. He ended the call with a reminder not to forget. A few days later, I got another call from him using the same line. I realized they lacked not only memory, but also vocabulary. What do you mean by the split of shared property? Why is it zero? You must be rolling in cash from your parents' insurance and alimony, he said. Ah, so that's what they were thinking. I patiently explained that my savings before marriage weren't part of the shared property, and since we had no savings after marriage, it naturally amounted to zero. Don't lie to me. If you think I'm lying, why don't you consult with someone? From now on, please communicate through my attorney. I won't be speaking to you directly anymore. Goodbye, I said, then hung up the phone and blocked James's number. 1 month after I left the house, James and his family finally moved out of the apartment. Not because they had a change of heart, but because they couldn't sustain their lifestyle. Naturally, James's income alone wasn't enough for a family of 5. They were used to shopping extravagantly with my card. Telling them to cut back now was impossible. I had let them use the card intentionally for this, knowing it would come to this. His family started pestering James for shopping money, and when he refused, they began stealing from his wallet. Even when James got angry, they blamed him for kicking me out. To top it off, the electricity, gas, and water were all shut off. Of course, I had arranged for that since I didn't plan to live there for a while. James tried to get the utilities restored immediately by phone, but the house was in my name, so no one else could reconnect them if the owner had them stopped. During the hot summer and early fall, his family couldn't handle the extreme heat and eventually left the condo. Where they went, I neither know nor care. James tried to stay until the end, but he eventually gave up because there was no electricity and he couldn't bathe. The divorce proceedings went faster than expected, not because James had a change of heart, but because he made mistakes. He cheated on me while we were still married, or rather, he started making moves on someone thinking he could kick me out soon. He boasted about owning a luxury apartment in a prime location downtown, using it to attract young girls. It's surprising he did this while his family was around, but he had a history of such behavior, so they didn't mind. Before leaving, I had installed cameras in several places in the house, which captured all the evidence. Maybe he underestimated me, but he really did disrespect me. He brought his family into my home without my permission, made a family card, and left me the bill, kicked me out, and cheated on me. I demanded a hefty sum in alimony for all these. When James saw the amount, he turned pale and desperately pleaded for reconciliation, but I had no such intentions. Knowing he couldn't pay, I made him borrow as much as possible from his company and took whatever I could get. When I threatened to sue him for fraud over the family card, he reluctantly agreed to my terms. Well, I hope he does his best to pay off his debt. The divorce is finalized, and I'm still staying at my grandparents' place. I haven't decided what to do with the apartment yet. I might sell it. I treasured it because my parents left it to me, but since they passed away when I was very young, and I have no memories of them, plus all this has happened, I think they'd understand if I let it go. My work as an illustrator is picking up. I might live alone again, but it's a good time for that. I can work just fine staying at my grandparents'. I'll depend on them a little longer, then move forward with strength. Next time, I won't be fooled by a man who's only good-looking. I hope to find a partner